On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, should Darko be sweating? Will the Raptors be really good or will the Pacers be really bad? Plus more with our favorite stupid little game, What's More Likely?
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, August the 13th, and I am your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram, and you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link in the description of the podcast. It's free to join. As always, come be part of the group of little piggies who love to talk about basketball. Even in the middle of August, it's the dedicated crew in there. Come be part of our listener family. Of course, you can also go and you can't also do anything else. That's all the stuff. Just do all that. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season's around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. And we are off and running here on a What's More Likely Wednesday edition of Locked On Raptors. It's been a while since we played our favorite stupid little game. We're going to dig into what's more likely scenarios regarding Darko Rajakovic and his future with the Raptors. We'll talk about the Raptors' chances of finishing very high in the East versus the Pacers' chances of finishing very low. Plus, Ochai Agbaji is going to re-up, or will he be on a different team by the time the deadline rolls around? We get to all that on today's show, but let's welcome in my favorite dude to play What's More Likely with. It's Vivek Jacob. Big V, how the hell are you, pal?
I'm doing great, man. As we were talking about before the show, it is peak summer season, and I'm enjoying all the chances to get outside, play some soccer, play some tennis, enjoy the Blue Jays when I can.
Ooh, the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays. Shout out to the Blue Jays.
Shout out to the Blue Jays.
Man.
70 wins. First team in the AL to the 70-win mark. So keep it rolling, baby. Keep it rolling.
Nice balm for weary Toronto Raptors fans. You get to, enjoy a fun, cool team right now. And hey, hopefully that portends more fun, cool team stuff for the Toronto Raptors in the season to come. One guy who better hope that this team is fun and cool and wins some games is Darko Rajakovic, the head coach of the Toronto Raptors, going into his third year with the team, and frankly his first year where he's been given a shot, I think, at having any kind of success based on how the team has been laying out their agenda the last couple of years. Big V, the first what's more likely scenario I have today, and for those who are uninitiated, of course, I pick two wildly unlikely outcomes, and we pick which of those two wildly unlikely outcomes is the most likely to happen. My first one for you is, what's more likely? Darko Rajakovic finishes top 3 in Coach of the Year voting this season, or is let go by Christmas? Of course, the most likely thing is he probably just rides out the year and is the coach for a couple more seasons, because this franchise tends to work that way. Although the Masai Ujiri of it all and the Rodgers of it all, I think, throw a little bit of a question into this one. What is more likely for you, Big V? Darko Rajakovic gets his due. The Raptors do the thing where, they're one of the more surprising teams, and therefore he finishes top 3 in Coach of the Year voting, or he is fired before Christmas time. What you got?
Yeah, coming out hot. I mean, I will say that I do think that top 3 is more likely in terms of being a Coach of the Year finalist. And I feel like if you look at last season, they were 7-23 come Christmas. And you would pretty much have to repeat that for Darko to get fired, I think. Yeah. I don't see a scenario. You mentioned, some of the stuff that's happening above the front office. I think, maybe, there's a case to be made that with the Masai firing, they didn't value what he means to the people as much. But I'd like to think that over the last few months that they have seen, what he means to the people here, the community here. And that stability has been disturbed. And so if you were to fire a coach within the first couple of months of the season, I think you would require something drastic. If they just happen to be like 500 and you were to get rid of him, then that would strike you as a panic move, right? Yeah. So I think it would have to be something similar to last season, where they're 7-23. You've got all this talent, everyone's healthy. What's going on? And you'd say the offensive rating, the defensive rating, nothing is, looking the way you wanted it to. So because of that very, very unlikely scenario, I would say that a Coach of the Year finalist is more likely, because with that, you're looking at a scenario of, hey, is there a way the Raptors just come out? And then obviously we don't know the schedule as of yet, but is there a way the Raptors just come out of the gate, look great, and then finish with potentially a top 3 seed? I think that's what it would take. I don't think the 4th seed would be enough to be a finalist. But I do feel that if they were to get into the top 3, where they're, say, behind the Knicks and the Cavs, which is what you'd expect right now, then you'd say, okay, what is going on with this Toronto team? I think, people on the other side of the border would say, hey, what is going on with this team? How are they better than the Magic? How are they better than the Hawks?
I think I agree. I think finishing top 3 is probably more likely, because I actually don't think it's going to take top 3 for Darko to have his name in that conversation. I think, thinking back through the history of the Toronto Raptors, like Dwayne Casey won Coach of the Year, Nick Nurse won Coach of the Year. I think it's like very easy for the Raptors to surprise and kind of finish above where people think they will. And then that just like, the sort of collective masses are like, how could we have possibly been wrong about this? The coach must be incredible. Like, I just kind of think the way people vote for this award, I do think probably lends itself to, if the Raptors are like the 5th seed after going in with, I think, some pretty modest expectations in sort of national circles and, over-unders under 40 and all this stuff. Like, I think there's a real chance that he talks himself, I guess the team plays him into those conversations. I think too, like, thinking about some of the other coaches, I'm not sure Kenny Atkinson is going to be, top of the list if the Cavs have another great season, because they're more of a, all right, prove it in the playoffs type of team, right? I think the Knicks, yeah, maybe Mike Brown comes out and is awesome, but the Knicks were awesome last year. I think the expectations go well beyond the regular season there for the Knicks. Maybe Jamal Mosley or Quinn Snyder, if one of the Hawks or the Magic can sneak into that top 3, maybe that kind of is one of those spots spoken for. I think Mark Dagnall's gotten his due. I don't know if maybe if the Nuggets go crazy and have themselves, a really great season, maybe David Adelman finds himself into the conversation. But I do think there's just like a wide open field for this year. And if the Raptors are able to, or a team that's able to overshoot their preseason over under, that's going to instantly put Darko on the short list of, 5 to 10 guys who get talked about it. So I'll go there. I do think, though, I'm totally sweeping away the notion that he could be gone by Christmas, because I just don't trust that the ownership group is normal. They fired Masai Ujiri the day after the draft. That was weird. That was non-serious franchise stuff. And I could totally see them pulling some non-serious franchise stuff if, in fact, the season starts poorly. And they are like, well, what the hell? We believe in this team. We talked so much about how much we believe in this team after we fired Masai Ujiri for definitely not basketball reasons, or definitely basketball reasons, as they said. Again, their logic on this made zero sense to me. Either way, I think, I just think it's very possible that Rodgers does some Rodgers stuff, and that leads to Darko getting sort of Sacramento Kings, as it were, as the head coach, who maybe isn't all that deserving of getting the axe. That said, if they start 7-23, I could totally see that being a reasonable course of action, considering the expectations going into this year. And I don't know if there's anyone who's like more waiting to see what the schedule looks like than Darko, just to see if he can avoid the hell gauntlet the team played for the first 50 games last year. That'd be nice. Just get some normal opponents. Maybe stack those Bulls, Wizards, Nets, Hornets games at the start of the year for once. Wouldn't that be cool? But yeah, I think it's like, where are you at on the possibility of him being let go? Like, was this a conversation for you, or was this pretty easy for you to pick that he's going to be top 3 in Coach of the Year voting as the more likely outcome?
Yeah, I think it was fairly easy for me, just because, again, I find it very difficult to believe that he can be fired without a terrible record. And maybe that's me giving Keith Pelly and the rest too much credit. We don't know who the president is going to be as of this moment, as of this recording.
That's the other thing, right? New people like to have their own people, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I guess if I would be shocked if they were to just say, "Hey, we want a new head coach" before the season even starts.
Yeah.
I doubt you're going to go into a season and say, "Okay, we're giving you this chance," and then fire him by Christmas.
Mhm.
Now, if you were to say, if you were to change the timeline to maybe the trade deadline or something like that, then maybe I'd say, okay, that's a scenario where if the Raptors aren't like terrible, but are still mediocre, I could still maybe see a path to a firing
Mhm.
happening there because now it's longer into the season. And depending on, where the Raptors are ranking in different metrics and they're just not living up to expectations, then I could see that path. But I just feel like Christmas is too early.
Yeah.
Um, and and so, yeah, I feel like there's a bit of a clearer path to him being a finalist for the Coach of the Year. I will say
Uh,
though, I think
yeah.
the fifth seed, that argument, I think it's tougher just because we're in this scenario now where everyone is viewing the East as wide open, right? I think
That's true. Yeah.
it's only the top four that people are kind of looking at and saying, okay, Cavs, Knicks, Magic, Hawks, and then
Mhm.
we'll see what happens after that, right? And that's why I feel like fifth would be difficult to get him into the Coach of the Year conversation.
That's fair enough. Well, speaking of the top four, we're going to talk about the Raptors getting into the top four and whether that's more likely than another team going into the bottom five. We'll do that coming up in just 1 second on your What's More Likely Wednesday with Big V. Keep on listening. I'm like bad at this now. I forgot how to do the podcast after being off for 6 weeks. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in North America. And on August 26th, it's officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. I am not much of a football fan myself, but I know Patrick Mahomes is like pretty good and the Chiefs are like always there. So you're never going to go wrong throwing some money down on them. Or I know that my Tennessee Titans, the team I am a lapsed fan of, is terrible. What a long shot pick that would be to go win the AFC. I might go do that just to see if I maybe get back into Titans fandom if they win me some scratch. You can do it all. You can parlay your division winner, dark horses, all of that on the very easy to use FanDuel app. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now because Futures Day is one day and one day only. That's August 26th. FanDuel, play your game. Go check it out. Back at it here with Big V Vivek Jacob as we continue to play What's More Likely on this Wednesday edition of the show. Just a heads up on tomorrow's show. This was supposed to drop on Tuesday, but schedule and technological problems pushed it back to Thursday. Henny will be here. We're going to talk about Emmanuel quickly in depth as he gets ready for a season where he's pretty important to the Toronto Raptors. So we look forward to that on Thursday with our pal S. This one next, What's More Likely? Big V. What's more likely? The Toronto Raptors finish top four in the Eastern Conference, or the Indiana Pacers finish bottom five. This is a team that I've selected for a couple reasons. One, I think the Pacers are kind of very much in that morass of middle of the East teams the Raptors find themselves in, even without Tyrese Halliburton. I think Pascal Siakam, Andrew Nembhard, Obi Toppin, Benedict Mathurin maybe having a bigger role and maybe not going bozo mode all the time. I think there's a chance that can be still a pretty good team in this Eastern Conference. I also think there's sort of an interesting subplot here with their first round pick now being back in their grasp. When the Raptors traded for Brandon Ingram, looked like it was not going to be a pick worth much of anything until literally Game 7 of the NBA Finals when Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles. And now there's an outside shot. That's a pretty damn good pick. And maybe people are ruining the day that it was traded. I don't think you can blame the Raptors if that happens because it's like an entirely unforeseen set of circumstances. But people will surely do it because people love to litigate old trades. Anyway, what's more likely? Raptors finish top five, or the notoriously anti-tanking Pacers finish bottom five in a conference where I think the bottom five teams are going to be absolutely rancid and tough to break into. Big V, what you got?
Yeah, this was a tricky one.
I'm very good at what I do. I can't host the podcast properly anymore, but damn it, I can write a What's More Likely question.
So if you look at the Pacers, teams that I expect them to be better than, you'd say Brooklyn, Washington, Charlotte, Chicago, and I'd throw Boston into that mix just because I feel like it makes the most sense with all the moves that they've made to just at a certain point go into tank mode.
Not enough has been made. They're probably going to be starting Chris Boucher. It's not good if you want to win. Love Chris Boucher, but you're not winning
Yeah.
basketball games if you're starting Chris Boucher in 2025.
Yeah. So, those are 5 teams right there, and I think for the Pacers, as you said, they're a team that does not really look to tank. And so I do think that they might even go kind of into approval mode and say, hey, you know what? Last season, what's the thing that surprised everyone? What's the thing that impressed everyone? It's the depth. And we believe in Andrew Nemhard. We believe, in Benedict Mathurin. We believe in all these guys who can come in and make an impact and take on bigger roles. We'll see what Jay Huff gives them at center. Isaiah Jackson's back. So I could definitely see the path to them surprising people again. But I could also see things just, as much gumption as they might have, the reality might just set in and they might say, hey, you know what? It's a good thing we have that pick. Maybe we'll just go the other way. For the Raptors' case to get into the top 4, I think one thing that has to be kept in mind with both the Hawks and the Magic, despite having really upgraded this summer and on paper looking much improved, I don't think you can avoid the injury history of these two teams.
100%.
And so I think with the Hawks, obviously you're looking at Porzingis. Then honestly, I really like Jalen Johnson as a player, but he has not been healthy the last 2 seasons.
No.
And then
he's played 184 games in 4 seasons.
Yeah.
1 season over 56 games played.
Yeah. So he's going to have to prove that, right? That he can play a 65, 70 game season. And then with the Magic, obviously Jalen Suggs has had his injury history. Banchero, maybe you look at that and say it was a bit of a freak with the oblique, and then maybe even more of a freak with Franz Wagner having the exact same injury.
The oblique freaks.
There you go. There you go. And so I think that's kind of something to keep in mind. When you look at the Hawks and the Magic, I wrote about both those teams for Sportscasting if you want to go check that out. But I do think there is sort of a non-zero chance that the Raptors do get into the top 4 and sneak in there. And, for all the hype that the Hawks and the Magic are getting, everything just clicks for the Raptors and they get into the top 4. So for the competitive reasons, for the Pacers, for the path that I can see with the Raptors, I am going to go with the Raptors finishing top 4, just a bit more likely.
Yeah, this is not out of a belief that I think the Raptors are in fact finishing top 4. I need to make that clear. I just think the Pacers are they're probably the most tank-averse franchise in basketball. Herb Simon is 90 years old. That dude is not just green-lighting a whole tank season just because a guy got hurt. Yes, it's a very important and good guy, but I also think there's enough there. We've seen Pascal Siakam be the backbone of high 30s, low 40s win teams before. I think he's going to really kind of, there's going to be a lot of burden on him this season for sure. But I also think you combine the fact that that's kind of a try-hard team. They play a strange style that's tough to game plan for in the regular season. Rick Carlisle's an excellent coach. I just think they're probably going to be too good to be in that bottom 5, which again, I think it's going to be awful. I think the Celtics are going to win 25 games. And I think that's going to be kind of by design. And I think those other 4 teams are just awful, terrible, no good basketball teams. And so just a really tough, impenetrable bedrock of bad teams at the bottom of the conference, making 10th, I think kind of the lowest the Pacers will fall. And, there's also the Sixers are always a couple injuries away for a couple of very injury prone guys from being in that mix as well. So yeah, I think it's more likely the Raptors finish top 4 than the Pacers finish bottom 5. I also again, I don't think it's likely they finish top 4. I would say probably 6th is where I might predict they finish. And maybe that's a homer pick, but I also just think they have a lot of good players and we haven't seen the team play together. And so projecting them is hard. And I get why it's a lower projection than a lot of people are giving them, but I just think there's too much talent there for them not to win some games. But I'm not sold on the Hawks. Imagine being sold on Trae Young's Hawks. Like, I get it. Yes, they got Porzingis. They got Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Great. Trae Young is still the guy who drives the bus there, and Trae Young is still a guy who is kind of maddening. Oh, cool. He set more screens last year. Great. Like, I don't care. It's still Trae Young. He's still like the worst defender alive. And yeah, if there's any injury to Kristaps Porzingis, if there's any injury to Jalen Johnson, I think that team is going to be on pretty hard times. And so, again, they're probably the favorite to be the 4th seed in the East right now. I don't think they're favorites with a bullet by any means. The Magic, I think their projection is 3rd, probably is a little bit more earned, and they have more insurance on injury if someone goes down. We've seen Desmond Bane kind of carry a team for a stretch if he needs to with the Memphis Grizzlies. He's got lots of practice playing in place of very injured guys over there in Memphis, and so yeah, I think 4th is gettable. I think it's maybe not a wide open race because I think there's like 4 teams that might be able to get in there, but I do think there's a chance the Raptors are one of them. So yeah, I think that's more likely, even if I don't think that's actually where they're going to finish. That's kind of the beauty of this game and why I'm so good at these darn questions. We'll come back on the other side here, Big V, close it out with some talk about Ochai Agbaji, a bit of a forgotten man with the Raptors, who, by the way, is extension eligible going into the final year of his rookie deal. What's his future going to look like? We'll get into a what's more likely regarding that very question coming up in just 1 second. Wrapping things up here with the Big V, Vivek Jacob from sportscasting and cricket coverage and Raptors in 7 and being handsome and playing spike ball at a local park near you. Big V, let's get into this. What's more likely that's near and dear to your heart as one of the chief Ochai believers? You might be Ochai believer patient 0 based on your words on this podcast back in the day before he, had himself a revolutionary season last year and turned himself into like a pretty tidy rotation player in the NBA. He is, of course, due for an extension, up for one until the day before the season. The Raptors can sign one anytime with him. He is probably like the most proven of the Toronto Raptors bench players right now. Maybe that won't hold up as the season progresses. I have high hopes for Grady Dick and even Colin Murray-Boyles as a rookie and Jacoby Walter and all of that. But right now, Ochai has the most on his CV of being like a positive basketball player, I think, of anyone in the second unit. He's probably going to spot start here and there when guys get hurt. If Brandon Ingram goes down, he's probably the first guy to jump into that starting 5, as he was very much last year when the Raptors suffered injuries. And yet I have no idea how this is going to break with him going forward because of the way the league works, the churn that happens on benches, and just like the very big decision it is to pay anybody in this modern NBA landscape, especially when you're a team that's already pretty expensive like the Raptors are. What's more likely to you, Big V? Ochai Agbaji re-ups with the Raptors or is on another team by the trade deadline? What do you got for this one? And I'm sorry if this one makes you sad.
It does a little bit because I had to ground myself in reality and say that the painful reality is that him being gone by the trade deadline is probably more likely. And the reason I think that is because if you're the Raptors and if you're, looking at playing hardball, you're not really looking to negotiate the extension right now because he's coming off this great season where he's proven himself as, almost a 40% 3-point shooter, scoring efficiently. The defense is solid, if not spectacular. And if you're coming into this season, you're saying, okay, well, he's likely going to have a lessened role. So we can see how that plays out. The raw numbers probably won't pop as much as they did last season. And then we can just see with the 3-point shot. If it stays real, then it is what it is. We're probably in the same ballpark as we are right now. And if it cools off, then guess what? We've got not only a decision to make whether to continue with this player, or we've got a real bargaining chip in terms of getting him at a discount. And so for that reason, I think if an extension was going to happen, it would have happened by now. And so the Raptors would probably just ride it into the trade deadline and say, okay, let's see what's out there. And if not, we'll see if we actually have a good player here who can prove it for more than one season.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to sort out in terms of like what even is Ochai Agbaji's value in this kind of weird suppressed market where we're seeing look, I think there's being a lot of hoopla made over the restricted free agents, none of whom I think are particularly good in Jonathan Kuminga, Cam Thomas, and Josh Giddey. All and Quentin Grimes probably the best of those guys in terms of contributions to winning basketball, and none of them are getting big deals right now because there's no cap space. And so these teams are like, well, why would we pay you a lot when there's nowhere for you to go get money elsewhere? They, some of them could take the qualifying offer, go into a more cap space rich environment next summer, get paid. Good for them. But right now, that's like kind of the story of the offseason. And so I wonder how that affects the market of an RFA for next summer, which again, there is going to be more cap space in the league next year. It's not going to be totally this restricted sort of situation. So I could kind of see it a couple ways. One, do the Raptors go to Ochai and say, hey, look, like these guys aren't really getting paid. You were maybe not going to be an NBA player as of 2 years ago based on and not get a second contract based on what your production was. You seem like you are now. What if we gave you like 4 years, $32 million? We give you like $8 million to be a bench player. Ty Jerome just got $8 million to be a bench player for the Memphis Grizzlies. Maybe that's a comp you can go and use. Very different players, but similar sort of role and station within a team. Maybe you can get a nice, like team-friendly deal done that way. Like I think Caleb Martin signed a deal for about eight what was it? Yeah, same deal, like 4 years, 32. Just had a full-on meltdown in my brain trying to talk numbers. Great. But like, maybe there's something there. The other thing is maybe Ochai says, yeah, no, I'm going to wait till next summer. Yes, my role might be diminished this season, but I also kind of believe in myself going into an environment where there's more cap space, and maybe there's a team out there who will pay me, and maybe you guys can't match it. And so there's that. I also wonder, is maybe his trade value going to be reasonably high going into the deadline because there is going to be more cap space, and teams might be able to talk themselves into, well, let's just trade for Ochai as an RFA and just sign him in the summer. And we can kind of go that way. And maybe we have the flexibility to do it in the way the Raptors kind of don't because their books are so full. Maybe that's a way you actually get a real asset back for Ochai Agbaji. Like, I don't think Ochai is necessarily like a long-term starter for most teams in the NBA, but you can never have too many solid wings who shoot threes. And maybe there's a team out there that's a taker for him as like a fifth starter, 6-man to kind of fill in lineups type of guy that really seems just like desperate for that type of player. I think it's a really interesting situation. I do think if you pay him, that kind of telegraphs that you're definitely not paying RJ Barrett his next deal if that hasn't already been telegraphed enough. And maybe that expedites the process of moving RJ Barrett before the deadline. Those two guys kind of feel entwined, even though Ochai is going to make much less than what RJ makes. But just with how close they are up to the tax, it does feel like it's kind of one or the other if they're going to keep either. I don't know. What would you pay Ochai right now? You're like the Raptors. You're trying to give him like a market value deal. The Raptors love to give market value deals. What is the market value deal you would give to Ochai Agbaji right now? Not trying to like totally hustle him because there's no cap space in the league right
now. I mean, I am trying to hustle him. I'm probably looking at somewhere, but
hustling
like
your boy, unbelievable, man.
I mean, it's the reality of his situation and the player he is. I think if you mentioned Ty Jerome was like a 6-man candidate. So I think in terms of that outlook, you're probably looking at Ochai and saying, hey, how's a 4-year, 24 to 28 million deal sound, right? I think you probably try to get him on the cheap right now, feeling comfortable going into next year's situation and whatever might present itself. I think Ochai is he's in that tier of role player where he's very likely not going to net you someone better. He's more someone that it's like, oh, okay, we have a surplus at this position. Maybe we can just address a positional need. Sure. And so you find a team that you kind of match that with and say, okay, this team's looking for a shooting guard.
Give us your backup center or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the type of deal. If it's kind of a 1-for-1, obviously, if he gets packaged with someone else, then that dynamic changes. But I think as things stand, the other thing I will say with the contract is if they've had talks with different teams already in terms of a trade, and they've gauged what type of player that they can get, that can impact the salary negotiation too, because then you
Mhm.
want to keep that in the range of those
Sure.
players that you're moving him for. So then
Yeah.
maybe that gives him a slight extra bump. Maybe that brings him down a notch. But yeah, I think I'd probably be leaning toward somewhere in the 24 to 28 million
Mhm.
range over 4 years.
Yeah, fascinating one. Curious to see how it shakes out. Also, I mean, this is like an uninteresting story to me because shocker, the market changes year to year, but like one of the talks with all this RFA stuff is how the Emmanuel Quickly deal broke restricted free agency, and how it's such a grave embarrassment for the Raptors that they're paying Emmanuel Quickly $32.5 million. Shut up, it's dumb. I don't care. And I think he's going to be very good this season. We'll get into that on tomorrow's podcast, but is there like an overcorrection from the Raptors where they try to play the hardest of ball they've ever played with Ochai Agbaji to try to gain some good graces in the eyes of the people who really just want you to hustle everyone for every last dollar?
The Rogers era is here, baby.
Yeah, man. I will say, just total sidebar, like the amount of like plaudits that the Houston Rockets are getting for hustling their restricted free agent guys, like congrats. You're suppressing guys earning money in a bad system that probably shouldn't exist if the union really had its druthers. Well done. Great negotiation might. Like give them the Executive of the Year award. The league is boring. We talk about stupid things now. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, buddy, for hopping on the show and talking about the departure of your dearly, dearly beloved Ochai Agbaji by the trade deadline. I know this was tough for you, man. Anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Just the usual stuff that I'm doing over at Basketball Insiders and Sportscasting. Raptors in 7. I will say I was thinking of ideas for the off season, and I think now is actually a really good time. I'm gonna do kind of an anatomy of the rebuild series, and
Ooh.
so just looking at all the moves that have happened post championship up until now, and I think with Masai gone and Pascal and all of those guys gone, with Chris Boucher
Mhm.
being the last piece of that championship roster gone, I felt like now would be a really good time to do that. So you can look forward to that coming up at
Hell yeah.
Raptors.
Everyone go check out all Big V's great work. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm not really posting on Blue Sky much, just the show, but you can get the show every day over there. And once in a while, I'll have a thought about the hell world that we live in and put it out there. So there's that. You can join the Discord, of course. I'm pretty active in there. And you can follow us on Instagram as well. Get clips of the show because I'm being better about posting clips and stuff. Anyway, we'll be back again on Thursday talking IQ with Esper Henny. Should be a lot of fun. And then Friday, I might try to get one of our new no ceilings locked in NBA draft guys on the show to talk about Colin Murray Boyles on Friday. Fingers crossed I can get that all lined up schedule wise. But yeah, appreciate you for rocking with the show. And we'll be back again Thursday. In the meantime, thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. Still haven't hit one since I got back. Rusty at that too.